Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football, continuing with our summer scouting, diving into this Ole Miss Rebels team. And this is a very fun team to talk about. A lot of new faces, obviously, in the transfer portal with Lane Kiffin. Gonna break it down. Now, before we do, just want to say thank you to you guys. The summer scoutings have been just an absolute blast. And the best part about it is learning from you guys. So if you guys have any takes, players we're sleeping on, let us know in the comment section. And, of course, if you want to support the boys, you're rocking with the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Again, can't thank you guys enough for all the support. Almost at 7,000 subscribers. That's truly an insane number. And, Dill, without further ado, I'm going to kick this one off to you. How are we feeling about this Ole Miss team heading into 2023?
I mean, I'm expecting, frankly, a big jump in play. I feel like, again, Ole Miss is a team that's probably going to lose a lot of guys kind of every year just by the nature of how they do it and how active they are in the portal. But in terms of keeping the core together and a lot of the guys who are big-time producers for this football team, I think they're back. And I think that, frankly, starts with Jaxson Dart. Just giving him another year under this system and scheme, I'm expecting him to take the biggest jump. And ultimately, I think what he does will determine a lot of how successful this team ends up being.
Yeah, and a lot of the conversation around this quarterback room was like, oh, Lane Kiffin, like bringing in a lot of quarterbacks. Is he confident in Jaxson Dart? And I think at the end of the day, he just wanted the challenge. When you had Luke Altmaier transfer out, like you needed to grab one quarterback. I don't know if you needed to grab two quarterbacks, but at the end of the day, what you hear out of spring practice is that Jaxson Dart invited the competition and kind of rose above it. And it sounds like he's kind of that clear quarterback one. And you're starting to see like him pop up in some NFL mock drafts as well. And like this guy has this size. He has the arm talent. He has the athleticism to be an elite quarterback in the SEC. I'm excited to see what he can do with a little bit more consistency and, like you said, continuity in this offense. But, Dill, we got to talk about the dude in this team. And that's the Ole Miss rushing attack led by arguably the best running back in the country in Quinshon Judkins.
And that's the thing. You know what you're going to get with him. I mean, just a guy who burst on the team as a freshman. He can run hard. He runs with power. He also can run really effectively in space, which is super important to how Lane Kiffin and this Ole Miss offense kind of designed their run scheme, which is to get him the ball. Like those short pitches they use to the short side of the field, very effective. Some of those swing passes they use to him and some of the wide receivers, very effective. So I think the versatility that Judkins brings them, his ability to go inside the tackles, but also kind of work in the Lane Kiffin scheme of operating in space, I think makes him so good for this.
And that was something we talked about last year, talking about this Ole Miss team is like, they might play to their strengths, and that's their running back room and that's their offensive line. Until, I mean, we were all expecting Zach Evans. That was the guy we were talking about last year, not 3-star Quinshon Judkins. And Judkins comes in and like kind of like tells everyone what's up. And another guy I would add is Ulysses Bentley, who was, I mean, last year at this time, I was saying Zach Evans and Ulysses Bentley are two, like, it's one of the better running back rooms in the country. He's back. I think he'll be a strong running back too. And you look at the wide receiver room and you lose some guys who were very solid. They went high in the NFL draft, will be on NFL teams. They go into the transfer portal. Obviously, Chris Marshall gets kicked off the team, but they landed, Dill, you know how high I am as Zachary Franklin. Like, they land one of my more favorite wide receivers in the whole entire country. And you're looking at this pass catcher group. I love it.
Yeah, and that was huge to me. Like, I feel like we all thought Zachary Franklin was going to go to Ole Miss, but then you started hearing some rumblings kind of late in the portal process, if you will. Like, maybe it's breaking down, maybe there's a hang-up. So to land him was huge because, again, you did lose some good players led by, obviously, Mingo, and he's
a dog.
But to replace him with Zachary Franklin, and frankly, I think Trey Harris is underrated in terms of what he's going to bring. Productive at La Tech, and a guy who just more of that polished wide receiver. He's just going to, runs good routes, catches the ball in traffic, like just plays that solid game and let Franklin and Jordan Watkins kind of be the playmakers and the more dynamic.
I love Zachary Franklin the most because this Ole Miss team is going to want to push it downfield, and there's not many better wide receivers in the country at working vertically than Zachary Franklin with the size, the speed, the hands at the catch point, the body control. He kind of has it all. I'm happy you mentioned Jordan Watkins because I feel like he gets lost in the shuffle. I think he's a damn good wide receiver. Then you go to the tight ends. I said pass catcher for a reason. You go get Caden Pritzkorn from Memphis, and then obviously Michael Trigdad. I mean, if he can stay on the field and be kind of that dude. Like you're looking at like 5-6 guys who are legit weapons at this pass catcher group.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like again, he certainly lost some guys, but just the way Kiffin does it, he rolls guys in through the portal. And yeah, I think you're honestly looking for Trigg to just break out. It's like I feel like they wanted to use him. You saw them trying to get him on the field, especially in the red zone. I don't know. They must see something in him, and obviously anyone who's seen the build and in the athleticism, like the traits are all there. Again, if he can just get it rolling on the field with his old teammate Jaxson Dart, I think you got to hope, because he's like one of those real special playmakers if he plays 100%. What he is.
Yeah, and then the offensive line, you have to replace Nick Broker, but, I mean, they grabbed some guys in the transfer portal. I thought it was a solid group from last year. And, Dill, I know pass protection, you said you want to see a little bit of an improvement from like, the film you watched. But I think this offensive line, like, I don't think – in a world where, especially in the transfer portal, you're always so concerned about having depth and talent on the offensive line, I think Ole Miss has a pretty good group up front.
I mean, they might be starting 4 guys who are all juniors or above. And,
yes.
And like in this day and age, that's something. And to me, it's just, can that unit gel a little more? Because to me, it felt like they gave up too many negative plays, whether that was in the run game. I didn't give up a ton of sacks, but a lot of that is Jaxson Dart's escapability. I want that unit to kind of just look a little more polished and play together. Because, again, the talent feels like it's there. The experience now is there. I think that unit can take some jumps. And, again, it was a solid unit last year, but I think it can be really good this year.
And talking about a unit that I think can take some jumps, this defense, like, I like what they did in the transfer portal. You have some good guys that are returning, like Jared Ivey, who was a transfer last year. I think he's a really good player. Cedric Johnson. JJ Pegas is the guy that I have already in the draft notebook in terms of, like, if he can break out and be that elite disruptor from the inside. I love that. You add some depth with Stephen Wynn in the transfer portal. And then Isaac Ukwu from James Madison, one of the more productive defensive linemen in the country last year. Though the defensive line is solid, and then they do what Ole Miss always does in the transfer portal, and they go get veteran linebackers who played a lot of football, and they got 2 of them here with Monty Montgomery and Jeremiah Jean-Baptiste.
In 2 guys who have just made so many plays for a long time. I mean, Monty Montgomery, you look like he's constantly around the ball for that Louisville team, and certainly just a huge add, because, again, you are kind of bringing in 2 guys, losing Brown.
Troy
right?
Brown, who was awesome for them.
I was blanking on the name for a second, but he was like their leader. He was the alpha dog in that, at least from that locker or linebacker room. So to bring in 2 guys who kind of take that shape and are that guy, have played a lot of college football, I think, again, just what Lane Kiffin's able to do. He finds his holes and he replaces them. And I think he's got 2 guys who should be able to fill that gap pretty smoothly.
Yeah, and I'll shout out one more. Kari Coleman, the transfer from TCU. I like what his game is too. So you're talking about a front 7 that I think is, when you talk Ole Miss, it's a lot about the offense and how explosive it is. I think they got some dudes in the front 7. Now the secondary, you have some question marks. You lose some guys in the transfer portal. Losing a guy like Davis Ignosin obviously hurts. A guy like AJ Finley goes to the draft. I love their safeties. I'm going to say it right now. Ladarius Tennyson from Auburn, the transfer. I've been talking about so many transfers. And then Hasheem Young, who was one of my favorite players on that Iowa State team a couple of years ago. Like what they have there. And then they go to the transfer portal and get some cornerbacks. Get some cornerbacks with length, right? You go up and get John Sanders from Miami of Ohio, 6'4", and then you go get Zamari Walton, who's 6'3", from Georgia Tech. At one point, I feel like those guys, and John Sanders a little bit more, kind of a lottery ticket. Like, how are you going to take that step from the MAC? But if he clicks, like that 6'4" frame with the athleticism, I mean, like this could be a really solid secondary group that I think will be kind of headlined by 2 safeties I like a lot.
Yeah, and that's kind of becoming the blueprint in how college teams want their cornerbacks. Like they're all, I feel like a lot of big teams are going to the portal, getting guys out of the lower tiers of college football, and if they're big and they're athletic, like, scoop them up and see what your coaches can do. Like, yeah, you're putting some trust in that defensive staff and in what Lane Kiffin does in terms of his development. But man, if these guys, and you just need 2 of them to click, I think with DeAndre Prince, you kind of have your guy. Played a lot last year, looked really good. So now you probably just need one of these big, tall athletes to get it rolling, and you filled out a very good secondary, I think.
All right. the last piece of the puzzle, taking a look at the schedule, and it's not an easy schedule by any means. Mercer on the road at Tulane. I think Ole Miss fans know not to overlook that game. That's a Tulane team that beat USC in a bowl game last year. At the end of the day, I think Ole Miss wins that game if they play their best ball. Now, Ole Miss was a little shaky last year to begin the season. They won't be able to have that this year. Like, they're going to have to bring it against Tulane. Georgia Tech should be a win. And then you get into just the meat in a brutal SEC schedule. You go on the road to Alabama, LSU. You have on the road at Georgia later in the season. They'll outside of on the road at Bama, on the road at Georgia, where it's hard for me to sit up here and say Ole Miss is going to win that football game. You probably could throw LSU too, because I am high on LSU. Outside of those two games, Georgia and Bama, and then LSU maybe could be a toss-up, or Ole Miss was feisty and then just like withered away late. Though this is an Ole Miss team that if Jaxson Dart can play to his like potential, it's a team that a lot of SEC teams I don't think are going to want to play in 2023.
I mean, frankly, to me, what you're looking at, like, I think you'd love to steal one from Alabama, LSU, or Georgia. Like, those are the three games. I mean, those are premier football teams right now. But to me, what you want to do is see them go beat Arkansas and Texas A&M. Like, those are two games that I'm looking at. Like, they're not necessarily upsets, I wouldn't say, but they're teams that, like, I feel like are kind of even. Maybe you could debate Texas A&M would be an upset if Ole Miss lost to them, but those are the two teams that I feel like are, if Ole Miss is going to pull into the next stratosphere, if you will, of teams in the SEC, those teams like Arkansas and Texas A&M and Mississippi State, although I'm not sure they're going to be that team this year, those are the type of games they need.
I like that take because it does seem like Ole Miss is now like, all right, we're back and we're a above average competitive team in the SEC. Now can we take the next step? And that's where we see a lot of SEC teams like falter. Like, it's really hard to take the next step. We might be seeing Tennessee do it, but we're not sure. Ole Miss is kind of on the verge. Like, they're feisty with a lot of these teams. Can they get that marquee win in 2023 that says, all right, yeah, Ole Miss is one of the top dogs in the SEC? And I'll round it out with this. Gotta go on the road and beat Mississippi State. You gotta win the Egg Bowl. I mean, that's probably one that I think a lot of Ole Miss fans want to get. But again, I think you're really excited about this team. I think the potential with how good Jaxson Dart can be.
That's going to be it for me. If he can just like cut down on the mistakes and the like really bad plays he made, I felt like at times. And frankly, I think he could have had a lot more interceptions on the year. But if he just plays like within himself a little more, I mean, he's still got to be that playmaker, because when he improvises and makes plays, like he makes a lot of plays for them.
Yes.
But it's just don't throw the ball up in the middle of the field just willy-nilly, because again, that felt like he put the ball in harm's way too often doing that. But when you saw him playing well, I mean, the ability to run the ball, just a really savvy runner, like that type of play, it's there. You see it. It's just and you do trust Kiffin to do it, because that's
and one other thing I'd say is in an SEC where it's like you don't have the Bryce Young, like there's an argument that Jaxson Dart could be the best quarterback in the SEC. I mean, we talked about KJ Jefferson, Daniels from LSU. Like, there are a lot of solid quarterbacks. Jaxson Dart might be the best quarterback.
I mean, on the talent standpoint, he looks like he's probably there right now. It's
like can he take that step? And we all know how college football goes. When you have the best quarterback on the field, it makes winning football games a hell of a lot easier. Again, appreciate you guys checking the boys out. If you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate y'all, and we'll talk to you guys later.